I never thought I'd be the type to get wrapped up in neighborhood drama. I'm an architect. I work from home, keep to myself, and follow the rules. But that all changed the day Deborah Winters took over as president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. To her face, people call her Deborah. Behind her back, everyone calls her Karen, not her real name, but it fits. She's a living embodiment of every nightmare stereotype, entitled, power-hungry, and obsessed with rules. When I bought my craftsman-style home 3 years ago, the HOA was led by a retired judge. He ran things with fairness and common sense. But after he moved to Florida last year, Deborah pounced. She campaigned hard, promising to restore property values and enforce standards. What that really meant was unleashing a reign of petty tyranny on our quiet neighborhood. It began with daily violation notices over the most trivial offenses. Mrs. Chin down the block got fined because her trash bins were visible for an hour after pickup. The Johnsons received a formal warning for leaving their holiday lights up until January 8th. 3 days past the deadline. I managed to stay off Deborah's radar for months. I followed every ridiculous rule in our 32-page covenant to the letter until spring came. That's when the real trouble began. In my backyard stood a beautiful maple tree, perfectly placed to provide shade for my home office during warm afternoons. It had been there long before I bought the house. According to my property survey, it was clearly within my lot, about 4 feet inside the fence I shared with Deborah. One Saturday morning, while sketching designs at my desk, I heard the low hum of machinery coming from outside. Curious, I glanced out the window and nearly dropped my coffee. There was Deborah, standing in my yard, directing 2 men with chainsaws who were cutting branches off my tree. I rushed outside, heart pounding. "What do you think you're doing to my tree?" I shouted. She turned toward me, not the least bit surprised. She wore oversized designer sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. Her highlighted bob was flawless. Clipboard in hand, she looked like she was conducting a symphony, not orchestrating the mutilation of someone's property. "Oh, good morning," she said cheerfully. "The branches are crossing the property line and dripping sap onto my new patio set. The HOA bylaws, Section 12, Paragraph 4, clearly state that no foliage may encroach on a neighbor's property." "That might be true," I said, trying to stay calm, "but you can't just walk onto my property and start cutting without permission. That's trespassing." "As HOA president," she replied with a smug smile I recognized from every HOA meeting, "I'm authorized to directly address rule violations. I sent you a notice last week." She hadn't, and we both knew it. The contractors hesitated, clearly sensing the tension. "Please ask your workers to stop immediately," I said, lowering my voice. "If the branches need trimming, I'll hire someone myself. But you're on my property without consent." Deborah waved her clipboard. "We're already here. They'll be done in a moment." I pulled out my phone. "If they cut one more branch, I'm calling 911 for trespassing and property destruction." That got their attention. The chainsaws went quiet. The men looked at Deborah, uncertain. Her face flushed, not with shame, but with fury at being challenged. "Fine," she snapped. "Expect a violation notice and a letter from my attorney. You have 3 days to address this unkempt tree." They left, but not before taking several large limbs from my beautiful maple. I documented everything. Photos of the damage, the workers, and the survey markers proving the tree was clearly on my side of the fence. Sure enough, by that afternoon, a formal HOA violation letter landed in my mailbox. It cited Section 12, Paragraph 4 for encroaching vegetation, and Section 8, Paragraph 2 for failing to maintain aesthetic standards. The letter demanded I remove the diseased and unsightly tree within 7 days, or face $100 per day fines. The tree wasn't diseased. It was healthy and thriving, until Deborah's goons butchered it. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a tree. This was about control, and it was time to fight back. I started smart. First, I hired a certified arborist to assess the tree. He confirmed it was perfectly healthy, though now lopsided from the unauthorized trimming. Then I went through the HOA. Bylaws line by line. Yes, They mentioned encroaching branches, but nothing prohibited a healthy tree on private property. I wasn't just going to defend my tree. I was going to make sure Deborah Winters regretted ever crossing my fence. As I dug deeper into the HOA bylaws, I found something crucial. Any board member with a personal interest in a dispute is required to recuse themselves from enforcement actions. That meant Deborah, my neighbor, the self-appointed enforcer, and now my adversary, was in direct violation of the rules. Armed with this and the arborist report confirming my tree was healthy, I drafted a formal letter to the HOA board. I sent it to every member except Deborah. I kept it professional, but firm. I outlined everything: the trespassing incident, the unauthorized trimming, the false violation notice, and specific bylaw sections she'd ignored. The response came quickly, and it was not what I expected. Several board members reached out privately, apologizing for what had happened. It turned out Deborah had been acting alone in many recent enforcement actions, and the board was growing increasingly uneasy with her authoritarian style. They assured me that no further action would be taken against my tree. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I had to visit a client's construction site. I left before sunrise and returned just after 2 p.m. As I turned onto our street, I noticed a strange commotion near my house. There was a truck from Karen's cut-rate tree service, parked out front, an ominous name, in retrospect. Then I saw them, men with chainsaws not trimming but cutting my entire maple tree down. I slammed the brakes, jumped out of the car, and sprinted toward my yard. And there she was, Deborah, in full view, wearing designer workout gear like she was about to hit the country club. Her smug smile said everything. She had parked her gleaming red BMW convertible across the street, front row for the show she had orchestrated. "Stop," I shouted, voice sharp with disbelief. "Stop right now." The workers paused, engines humming. Deborah casually stepped forward, waving a piece of paper like a queen presenting a royal decree. "I have full authorization from the HOA to remove this hazardous tree," she said, eyes gleaming with triumph. "It's a safety concern now. Emergencies don't require homeowner consent." I snatched the document from her hand. It was printed on HOA letterhead, but it only bore her signature, not the 3 required signatures from board members for emergency actions. And the claim that the tree was hazardous? A complete fabrication. "This is a forgery," I said, holding the paper up. "You know it. Tell them to stop, or I'm calling police." She gave a nonchalant shrug. "They're almost done. The tree was unstable after the last trim. Could have fallen at any time." Of course, it was unstable, because she had it hacked apart without permission. The workers looked unsure now, sensing something was off. "Guys," I said, turning to them, "this woman does not have legal authority to cut down this tree. I have a certified arborist report and property documents proving it's healthy and entirely on my land. If you keep cutting, you'll be liable for everything." One of the workers shut off his saw. "Ma'am," he said to Deborah, "you told us you had the homeowner's consent and proper authorization." Deborah's mask of calm cracked. Her face twisted into a scowl. "I am the authorization," she snapped. "I'm the HOA president." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Michael, one of the HOA board members. "Hey," he said urgently, "I just got a call from Lisa across the street. She said someone's cutting down your tree. Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "Deborah brought a crew. The trunk is already half gone. She forged an HOA approval." "What?" "That was never voted on. We didn't authorize anything." "Hold on. I'm calling the other board members and coming over right now." I hung up, heart pounding. Deborah was about to learn that not even HOA presidents are above the rules. The sound of chainsaws finally went silent. The tree service crew had stopped working, packing up their equipment, clearly spooked by my warning about legal liability and forged documents. But the damage had already been done. They had cut through nearly 80% of the trunk. My once beautiful maple tree now stood like a wounded giant, groaning under its own weight. Deborah didn't care. "You're making a big mistake," she hissed, voice full of fury and self-righteousness. "This neighborhood has standards to maintain." I stared her down. "No, you made a mistake. trespassing, forgery, property destruction. Should I go on? Before she could respond, a deep creaking sound interrupted the standoff. The maple was starting to fall. Everyone instinctively backed away. The workers scrambled toward the sidewalk. I stepped back, hard in my throat. But Deborah, still in full Karen mode, kept ranting, oblivious. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about your interference with HOA Boosie. Crack! A sharp, thunderous snap split the air as the trunk gave way. And then, like divine retribution, the entire tree tipped and crashed. Not toward me, not toward the workers of my house, but directly onto Deborah's prize red BMW convertible parked across the street. The roof caved and instantly, the windshield exploded into shards. The trunk crushed the hood like a soda can. There was a moment of dead silence. Then came the scream. My car, look what you've done, she shrieked, the pitch high enough to violate our noise ordinance. I didn't flinch. What I've done, you trespassed. You forged HOA documents. You illegally cut down my tree. This, I gestured at the wreckage, is your doing. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. She looked like a bad actress, cycling through emotions too quickly for the scene. Around us, neighbors were stepping out of their homes, drawn by the sound and spectacle. Phones were already out recording. The tree crew started inching away, their foreman already on the phone, likely calling his insurance company. They wanted no part of the aftermath. Then Michael, along with 2 other HOA board members, arrived and took in the scene with stunned expressions. The workers were quick to explain. Deborah had insisted she had full authorization and homeowner consent. Suddenly, Deborah's phone rang. She stepped aside to answer, but her voice still carried. Yes, it just happened. They destroyed my car. No! Technically, I didn't have written permission, but I'm the HOA president. And what do you mean you won't cover it? But it's their tree. Negligence? I'm not negligent. I was enforcing standards. She hung up slowly, her face ashen. Her insurance company had apparently told her the truth. She was on her own. The fallout came fast. My homeowner's insurance agent reviewed everything I sent. Photos, witness statements, property records, even Deborah's bogus letter. He was shockingly sympathetic. The HOA board called an emergency session. And from what I later learned, the tone of that meeting was not kind to Deborah. Within the week, I received a certified letter. Inside was a formal signed apology from the board, excluding Deborah, acknowledging the wrongful removal of my tree. Enclosed was a check for nearly $20,000, covering the full appraised value of the mature Maple Plus landscaping restoration. Even more satisfying, attached to the letter were the meeting minutes. Deborah Winters had been officially removed as HOA president. Unanimously. I was reading the letter on my porch the next evening when a black luxury SUV rolled into her driveway. The rental car sticker was still on the rear window. Deborah stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses. Even though the sun had already dipped below the horizon, she spotted me and froze. I didn't say a word. I just raised my glass of iced tea in a casual, almost polite toast. She flinched, then turned quickly and disappeared inside without a word. Justice, it seemed, had deep roots and sometimes fell with satisfying precision.